At the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and the United Nations as a whole, we believe that inclusive industrialization is the most viable development path for Southern Africa and the continent at a large to deal with the overlapping challenges that I've just laid out before now. For the AFCFTA, and I think we all talk about this and are excited about how it is a game changer that we talk about, but we need to pursue it in a very strategic way. And we do need to add value to our products, but also make sure that we are developing the value chains that we need within the sub-region would be one of those critical issues that we need to work on. Job creation, I've already mentioned, as well as the transition to green economies is critical. I strongly believe that these four actions and maybe others would lay important foundations for a resilient and sustainable Southern African region. And that's the reason why we only recognize the member states initially. But that is not to say the rest of the participants are not, or stakeholders are not important to this issue. But it is a statutory meeting. But it has matured to be to where we are now with more focus on why we have these meetings. And thanks to the current Bureau for steering us as your Secretariat towards this end. We will look at what are the critical issues. We will look at what we should focus on as the ECA, but also part of the UN system going forward. But two important areas that we use this platform for, it's basically programmatic. But the second one has been to go beyond the talk, individually and collectively as a region, to an accountability mechanism for the sub-region where we can track progress on the commitments that we make each year. So it will be important for us to go away with a few, not so many, not a laundry list of recommendations and things that we can work on, but what is it? What are those 2-3 things that we can work on as a region and can report when we meet again in 2026 in this regard?
We have decided that trade, inter-Africa trade, regional trade provides one of the pathways that we must explore in terms of how we take our dreams forward. And I see this meeting as an important space for us to reflect on some of the questions and puzzles that we must resolve in order to get inter-Africa trade going and thriving. And so, if inter-Africa trade is the answer to our long arrested prosperity, what are the questions that we must answer in order for us to get there? Our questions, if framed and worked out properly, would already provide a huge portion of that puzzle that we need to resolve. And as a starting point, this meeting is already, I believe, framed around two important questions. Number one, how do we build and develop regional value chains? And number two, how do we overcome barriers to trade in the region and indeed the entire continent? These are important questions with multiple other sub-questions, and I believe that at the end of these 2 days, you will have found some practical answers and pathways to their implementation. If I could add to these two questions that have already framed this particular meeting, one, what are we trading across the region and the continent? We have said we want to trade, but what are we trading? Why is it? How are we working to strengthen our industrial bases to deliver, to drive production? How do we differentiate our products based on our comparative advantages? And I think when we talk about trade barriers, a little bit of that lies in that very question about how we differentiate our products so that we do not have to block each other when we want to trade because we are producing things that are somewhat different. Now, across Africa and the region, economies face common challenges: limited diversification, vulnerability to external shocks, and underutilized industrial capacities. What concrete strategies can we come up with as our country's foremost experts to resolve these issues? And how do we ensure implementation of what could initially be disruptive, even painful decisions, in order for us to position ourselves to reap benefits in the future? And on behalf of the United Nations and on behalf of UNECA, I pledge our presence, Minister, to work with you to develop that platform of action for Eswatini that we'll be monitoring together, so that your leadership of this forum will be memorable and remembered by the country.
On behalf of ICSOE member states, I wish to reaffirm our confidence in and continued partnership with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and the wider UN system and family as critical allies in our common fight against poverty, inequality in Southern Africa. The theme, Unlocking African Continental Free Trade Area's Potential, is a very welcome one as we move from frameworks to implementation. The African Continental Free Trade Area presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform our economics from exporters of raw materials to exporters of value-added goods and services, as already alluded to through my previous speakers in terms of value addition. For this transformation to succeed, ladies and gentlemen, and Honorable Minister, we must strengthen regional value chains, harmonize industrial and trade policies, and remove non-tariff barriers that fragment our markets. In this regard, we commend ECA support to member states, notably Botswana and Lesotho have formulated their national African Continental Free Trade Area strategies with ECA's assistance. Southern Regional Office, Southern Africa, in collaboration with the African Trade Policy Center, is supporting the government of Namibia to develop a step-by-step guide for trading under the FTA. Through collaboration with the SADC Business Council, ECA is developing the Southern Africa Trade Investment and Technology Platform to support private sector-led growth and MSME competitiveness. In Mauritius, ladies and gentlemen, ECA together with International Trade Center, with the International Trade Center, is supporting Mauritius Hub and the Economic Development Board of Mauritius, where they have empowered over 70 women entrepreneurs to trade under the FCTA, linking inclusivity with economic transformation. These interventions illustrates how the African Continental Free Trade Area can serve as both an engine of industrialization and a platform for inclusive and sustainable growth.
Today, over 70% of our exports remain unprocessed commodities. Our region processes less than 5% of its copper locally, despite holding nearly 60% of Africa's total output. These figures remind us that the promise of the AFCFTA can only be fulfilled when we convert our advantages in resources to a competitive advantage in production. We must translate the AFCFTA framework into tangible production and trade linkages. This calls for identifying and investing in strategic value chains that leverage our diverse endowments, for example, battery production, linking the DRC's cobalt, Zambia's copper, and South Africa's manufacturing capacity, agro-processing and food security chains that add value to our region's maize and horticultural projects, and the leather industry, linking Botswana's livestock sector with Zimbabwe's tanning and manufacturing expertise. Such linkages will create jobs, enhance competitiveness, and reduce our vulnerability to external shocks. His Majesty King Mswati III's vision to industrialize the continent is simple but transformative, is to use the government's procurement to create guaranteed markets for Africa-traded goods and Africa-produced goods. It's to stimulate the local industries and accelerate the shift from trade in raw materials to trade in finished products. This approach would provide the demand certainty needed for private investment and regional supply chains to flourish. Eswatini is therefore advancing the idea of a right of supply mechanism, through which African governments voluntarily commit to sourcing selective products from within the continent, giving each African country their own unique list of products to produce that they have the right of supply for the rest of the governments on the continent. This mechanism will promote predictable demand, encourage regional specialization, and ultimately help make AfCA a living reality and give it the push that it needs to get across the line. The market that truly works for Africans. Beyond trade, this initiative will also help retain resources within Africa, creating the fiscal space to finance the social sectors such as health, education, and social protection. It's a powerful example how Africa's collective choices can transform our economies from within.